Hello and welcome to the second series of 3 lessons from Breakthrough Leaders with me, Zana Ryabchik, CEO at Breakthrough Global.
And with me, Bart Sale, founder of Breakthrough Global, where we've spent the past 30 years developing the Breakthrough methodology to help transform companies and people looking to reach their highest level.
And this podcast is all about giving you insider tips and the know-how from the world's foremost leaders and creative talents, distilling their knowledge and experience into 3 lessons, which we guarantee will help you and your companies to unleash your potential. And you can get in touch with us at bartsale@breakthroughglobal.com to find out more. In today's episode, we'll hear from Helen Tupper. Helen is the co-founder and CEO of Amazing If, a company with an ambition to make careers better for everyone. Together with her business partner, Sarah Ellis, she's the author of 2 Sunday Times bestsellers, The Squiggly Career and You Coach You. Their Squiggly Careers podcast is the UK's #1 careers podcast. Helen also works as a trustee for Working Families, a UK charity with a mission to support families and carers with their work and life commitments. And she's held leadership roles for Microsoft, Virgin and BP. And I met Helen at an event a few years ago, and she's just a very inspirational, down-to-earth, easy to talk to, friendly and plainly delightful person. So I thought it would be fantastic to get her on the show. And today, we'll learn these 3 lessons from her. Embracing Squiggly Careers.
The thing that has really helped us to grow has been giving people this freedom and permission to talk about their career differently, and then, enabling them to do the things that they want to do and not be restricted by this ladder-like notion that's been around for such a long time.
How great leadership unleashes potential.
I always think about management. I think it is a responsibility and not just a role.
Why your response to failure matters.
I mean, inside I was thinking, oh, this is awful. But what I did outside was I communicated with all the stakeholders, I stayed calm, all that kind of stuff. And so suddenly you're demonstrating a lot of very different strengths under pressure to lots more people.
Lesson 1, Squiggly Careers.
So a squiggly career is the opposite, really, of the ladder-like notion of development that's been around for over 100 years, which says that, we can completely plan for our career because we're operating in a predictable world of work, and the path that you set out on is the one that you're going to become progressively more senior in until you reach the destination that everybody wants from work, which is to get to the top. That just isn't true of what people want from work or what work looks like anymore, though, as I'm sure we'll talk about, the legacy of that ladder is pretty strong in lots of organisations. So what squiggly means is that we are working in a world that is full of change, and it's unpredictable and it's ambiguous. But what that does create is more options and opportunities for people's careers. So in a squiggly career, you can develop in different directions. You don't have to be defined by the last job that you did. Success isn't one size fits all, and your career can be as individual as you are. And I think when Sarah, my business partner, and I first started thinking about squiggly careers over 10 years ago, we didn't really know how much it was going to stick. And so that has really been the thing that has really helped us to grow, has been giving people this freedom and permission to talk about their career differently, and then, enabling them to do the things that they want to do and not be restricted by this ladder-like notion that's been around for such a long time.
And I think the fascinating thing for me about it is that I'm completely out there. I'm left field. I'm the only person left of my generation who hasn't had a squiggly career. So I just find it a fascinating concept.
You're underestimating yourself, Zana, because...
Yeah, it's true. It's Breakthrough's a squiggle in itself. Yeah,
it's squiggly anyway. But the other thing is, for me, it's about growth. There's so much more opportunity now for squiggly. Because I think people do get stuck, don't they? They get stuck in their careers. They get stuck for all sorts of reasons, and they're no longer growing. So for me, that's the key thing that I would look at. Am I still growing? If not, let's go. Let's move.
And I think one of the things that I absolutely love doing is understanding those reasons, because to your point, Bart, they're so different. Some people, it's about confidence. So some people get themselves stuck because they don't have the self-belief yet to get themselves unstuck. And then some people, it's because they can't sort of see what they can be because they haven't looked at the possibilities beyond the role that they're in today. And you're like, okay, I know how I can help you there. And for some people, it's that they've never really created a community around their career. And honestly, one of the things that I love is when I talk to people, whether it's groups or individuals, and I just try and understand like what's getting you stuck, because we can get you unstuck. And if you are unstuck, Squiggly's there for you.
And I think that a big part of that now is what you talk about in terms of kind of self-coaching, so that we all need to really take control of this for ourselves. And that's a huge mantra of breakthroughs, is start with yourself. So there's kind of two elements to that I think are critical, and maybe they're hand in glove, and that is skills. This idea that now skills are so important. It's not about where you went to university. It's not about maybe even necessarily what experience you've had before, but what are the skills that you've got? And are you curious and have that growth mindset to continue to learn and take on new skills and build into that? And also what you value. So how do those two things kind of marry together and work in your world?
Yeah. So when I'm talking to organisations and working with individuals on Squiggly Careers, I have this sort of Squiggly Career Readiness Scale in mind. And there's questions that I can ask that help me to see where people and companies sit on the scale. And it starts in very similar places to what you were talking about, Zanna. So we start with mindset. Does this individual, does this organisation have a learning mindset? Are they open? Are they curious? Fear and ego getting in their way? Or are they kind of willing to give it a go? So you've got to have that, because you can't build without that, really. Then we can get into the skill set. I'm always trying to see, like, where are we on that skill set point? Which skills have we got? Which have we not? Which ones do we need to work on? And then we start to tip more into the company things now. I think one of our biggest learnings at Amazing If was that we can't just help individuals. If I just write books for people, if I just do podcasts for people, then the problem that happens is they come back to me in 6 months' time and go, it was really helpful, but... And the but tends to be, I had a conversation with my manager and they didn't know what to do with this Squiggly Career thing that I talked to them about career possibilities. They just wanted me to fill in a form. And so we then sort of realised that on this readiness scale, you've got mindset, skill set, but then you've got to get capability. So you've got to help managers operate as coaches, for example. You've got to get frequent and fearless feedback happening in organisations. There's some really important capability you've got to build in a business. And then you get onto culture. That last bit, which is what makes Squiggly stick. It's the language of the organisation. It's how leaders show up when they talk about their careers. And so I'm always trying to work through this scale so that I start at the right place for either the person or the company. And I don't assume that, everyone needs the same things. People start in different places, but everybody can succeed in Squiggly Career. We just got to meet them where they are.
What inspired me about this is that I had a squiggly career and didn't know about it. And it served me well. The main thing for me was that I was exercising choice. I had choice. And I didn't feel that I was the effect of something else or somebody else's expectations. And I think that empowered me throughout. And not every decision was a great decision. Sometimes I felt I was declining, but again, I then had the choice to do something about it. And I think that together with the empowerment that I felt has brought me to where I am now. And I have no regrets about anything I did.
So ask yourself these questions. Right now, in your role, where you are in your life, do you feel fulfilled? Are you happy in your role? Are you growing in your role? Are you working in the stretch zone? If the answer to any of those is no, perhaps it's time to start thinking about where you can go to next. Maybe you should give Helen a call.
Lesson 2, unleash the potential.
What's been the story for you? And probably the second part to that is what leaders have really influenced you along that journey.
So it did start quite ladder-like, I think. One of my values is achievement. I didn't know that at the time. But I think when you are sort of at the earlier stages of your career, graduate schemes are like ready-made achievement, right? So you've got to go through a tough application process, and then you get all these different placements where you're trying to be the best. And I loved it. I loved it so much. I did 3 graduate schemes in ever-increasing more seniority. And I think they gave me a rapid exposure to what it was like to work in large organizations. And I realized that I love the corporate environment. I love the smart people. I love the pace. I really just loved working in these big businesses. But I think then what I started to realize was that it wasn't always the upwards moves that were the most interesting ones. I loved working in these big businesses, but getting into the small, the innovation teams that existed in them. And I just started to move around my career finding those places. So I did an innovation role in Capital One, for example. I did an innovation role in Eon. I did a sort of an insight role in BP. And I grew a lot by doing that. It's hard, though. It's hard. That's the other thing that I realized is these innovation teams in organizations, they're often the epicenter of change. And, that also took me to places like Virgin, where I think that was such a breakthrough moment for me. That was where I started Amazing If as a side project, because I suddenly felt this energy and this permission that I didn't just have to be this sort of change maker in work. I could do it outside of work as well. And I think, honestly, it was also where I had my first child. It was also where I studied my MBA. There was just something for me in the alchemy of being in that organisation.
I love that. It's about unleashing your potential and creating the space, the permission, the encouragement, the motivation, just all of the right kind of circumstances and environment to just completely unleash your potential. And it must just have been amazing, because if that was happening for you, it would have been happening for everybody else at the same time. I just think what an incredible environment to be in.
Well, it creates so many ripples, doesn't it? I think it creates ripples in the moment, because suddenly you go, well, I'm a manager. This is what I should be doing for my teams. And I've had lots of brilliant leaders who have helped me along the way. Funnily enough, I've reconnected in person with two of them this week. So, for example, my manager at Virgin, when all those things were happening, there's a guy called James Tipple, and I've met him this week. He came over to my house this week and we kind of caught up, and it was really lovely. He managed me back in 2013, and it's so nice to be reconnected and stay connected with him. And then my manager before James was someone called Phil Gilbert, who I met up with in London this week, and we haven't seen each other for about 10 years, and he managed me back in 2010 when I was at Eon in that innovation team. And I value their leadership and the impact that they had on my career so much. Phil he spotted strengths that I didn't know I had, and he put me in positions of stretch that I wasn't aware that I could do. He gave me that sort of permission to really, really progress. I call him my manure manager, which some people are like, oh, was that because he was a bit? And I was like, no, because he put me in the manure. I was this sort of small little plant, and he gave me loads of manure, this job I couldn't do, a budget I've never managed. He surrounded me with he gave me a coach. I didn't even know what a coach was. No idea. I didn't even know what to talk to them about. He put me on these programs for advanced management, and I just flourished under his leadership. I'm very grateful for it. And I think James did something very similar. We pitched a new business to Richard Branson, and then we built it and launched it. And I don't think I could have done that without the space and support that both of those managers gave me. But then those ripples have gone really far, because that has now, I'm years on from now working from Phil, but he very much influences how I manage people now. I always think about management. I think it is a responsibility and not just a role. I think so many people think, oh, I've got a job title of a manager now, great. And yeah, you've also got a responsibility for other people's happiness, not just this week, how they feel about work this year and how they're going to reflect on this moment years in advance. I just think it's a real responsibility. The only thing we do more than work in our life is sleep. So I think if you're happy at work, you're more likely to be happy in your life. And managers do play a big part in that.
Helen talks there about different facets of leadership. She talks about managing, coaching, that amazing coach that helped her to flourish. But she's also talking about leadership. And these are three facets of leadership that can often become collapsed and conflated. At Breakthrough, we've got a fantastic distinction that helps to separate them out.
In leading, we lead people. In managing, we manage stuff. We manage timescales and deadlines and resources. And in coaching, we coach performance. And these three aspects need to be separated so that you don't end up managing when you should be leading when you should be coaching. And now on to lesson 3. welcome failure.
What's failure to you, Helen, and how do you kind of talk to people about failure?
I think failure is being willing to do something you've not done before and find the learning in it. Because I think I've got a few different things that I can talk about here, that different failures I've had and different failures that I've been encouraged to make. So I remember when I used to work for Capital One, I had what I would always think of as, this is my biggest failure, but it's one of the ones that I think it really felt hard at the time, which was, without going into the details, a failed product migration, which sounds very corporate. I mean, it was quite corporate. There were some challenges that this created, and I was kind of leading part of the team and therefore took a lot of responsibility from myself for this failure having happened. And I felt really bad about it. And I was like, oh, my career's doomed. I was like, oh, this is awful. And then what I realized really quickly was that it was how I responded to the failure that actually made a big difference. And actually, I think my career was better because of it in that business. But what I did outside was, I brought people together. I tried to quickly respond to it. I brought lots of people's perspectives so we could solve the problem quickly. I communicated with all the stakeholders. I stayed calm, all that kind of stuff. And so suddenly you're demonstrating a lot of very different strengths under pressure to lots more people. And actually, I really learnt not to fear failure, because I think in that moment, my career was better because of it. Now, I'm not saying you want to invite it. I wouldn't want to cause that problem in order to create that. But I don't fear failure anymore as a result of that learning. And I also, again, working for Phil at Eon, part of my job at Eon was to launch 6 to 8 new products and services a year in the energy efficiency space. And he said to me, Helen, if some of those don't fail, you're not working hard enough. And what he didn't mean was like the hours. He didn't mean the hours. He meant that you're not pushing the boundaries enough. If everything is successful, we're playing it a bit too safe. And so I learned that about failure as well, that sometimes failure just means that you're pushing yourself into the edges where other people haven't been before. And so now I've got, okay, so failure can actually help me to demonstrate skills to other people. Failure helps me to push the boundaries and do things that other people haven't done before. And then in our company at Amazing Gift, one of the things we've realised is that one of the reasons people, fear failure is because they sort of worry about what other people think. So we really look at the language of failure. We call it mistake moments in our company, and we encourage everybody to share mistake moments clearly. And it does 2 things. A, it gets it out. It just gets it out so people don't bottle it up and build it up and it becomes much more of a personal issue for them. And second, it gets a lot of support from other people. Don't worry. Gosh, I did that too. I'm so glad you said that. Why don't we do this together next time? And so I've also learned that failure can be a really important way that teams get stronger.
It's so true. It's all about that psychological safety building and problem solving. Ours is a bit ruder, Helen. We call it, I fucked up. And that started from when I first joined, we actually had an analog fuck up folder where you fucked something up and you'd write a note about it and put it in the folder.
I love it.
And now we just do it on Slack. So either verbally in a meeting, guys, I've got something that I've completely fucked up. Or if somebody's made a mistake and it involves other people, you just have to, a polite way to say it's the hold your hands up moment. And we encourage it massively, 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 so that whether it's something little or big, people aren't ever afraid to say, oh, hold my hands up, I've completely messed that up, I'm so sorry, here's how I'm going to fix it, here's what I've learned. And that's the opportunity for growth and for other people to get behind it. But you'll have seen that, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And I think, I'm a master of that, but failing. But I don't fail. And that's one of the things that I learned, that things fail. Like I said earlier, I've had businesses that fail, but I'm not a failure. It's that failed. And for me to be a failure, there's just 2 things: that I fail to do something that I really want to do, or I give something up before I've given it my all. So they then are personal failures. If I look back and think, wow, what an opportunity, I didn't take it, I got stuck, I was on a plateau, whatever it was, I wish I'd have done that. That to me would be, my own failure. And I think what you said is another distinction, that it's the way you respond to failure that really decides whether this has been a growth opportunity or not.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the language of how you talk about it. I think the other thing that I see as well with failure is when the thing that I try to spot when I see it and I'm sort of coaching other people is when people fail and then they make it their identity that they're a failure. Like, they see something and I'm like, oh no, we don't, that we all fail. We all kind of have things that don't go the way we wanted to or didn't work out. Like there's all these things that happen all the time, but that doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you probably did something you didn't do before and there's something you can learn from it. But I think a lot of people, what I see in the context of Squiggly Careers, is people won't try something different. They won't move to a different function or try a different role because they worry that they might fail doing it. And it's sort of like, well, maybe it's not going to be the right thing for you, but you don't know, and you're not going to grow until you give it a go. But if it doesn't work, you are not a failure. It's just that wasn't the right move for you to make. And sort of disconnecting people from like one thing that hasn't gone well means that I'm not good at my work. That identity accumulation that people make is again something that I try to do with people quite a lot. So give them, because I think it's just liberating. When you carry that fear of failure, it's very limiting. And when you realise that making a mistake doesn't mean your career development is doomed, you're like, oh, okay, well, probably can give it a go then.
I was really excited to hear Helen talking about failure in this way because it resonates so much with what we teach people and how we work hard every day to internalise failure in a very different way and to reframe failure in a very different way.
So the first thing to remember is the failure isn't a failure in you and who you are. And for many, it's easy to say, let go of the fear of failure, yet it's harder to do. So my recommendation is to start small. Start with some of the smaller things that didn't work and get practice of letting go of any fear around it and pushing forward. Remember that courage isn't about not fearing things. Courage is about fearing things and moving beyond that fear.
So, Helen, this is the part in the podcast where we will ask you your hot seat questions. Are you ready?
I think so. Let's go.
Everybody says that as if it's really actually going to be hot and we might scold you if you don't get it right. But there's no right or wrong answers. All right. What's the most exciting thing you've ever done?
Oh, a treasure hunt on Necker Island to launch a business for Virgin. That was a lot of fun. I can tell you more about it, but the whole thing was just very, very surreal and just a lot of fun.
That sounds incredible.
Did you feel like you were a little bit in a dream? Like you came home and you were like, I had a weird dream that I was on Necker Island and we were just launching this product.
I mean, there was this moment at the end. So we hid this gold coin with Richard Branson's face on it in the sand. And everyone had to go through these different like rounds in the treasure hunt on Necker Island to be able to get to this moment. And there was this moment right at the end when everyone was like scrabbling in the sand to find the gold coin with Richard's head on it. And I was like, what? I work in marketing. What's going on? It was, but an amazing experience and kind of the end of it was the start of the business, but it was the end of the first phase of that business of pitching it, building it, prototyping it, selling the concept to lots of people, and then getting to that moment. So it was a really interesting, like literally a marker in the sand, but also very fun and very surreal at the same time.
Very surreal. Amazing. What inspires you in life?
Making work better for people. Like I am so sure that if we can help people feel more confident in control of their career, then work is better. And if work is better, it has such a big difference on people's life. Like, I feel like it's really grandiose to say, oh, I can make people's lives better. But I do think you make work better, you give people more confidence, control of their career. In my mind, it's all connected. And I'm just very inspired about how we can help people to do that.
What brings you energy and motivation in your everyday life?
People, connection, conversation. I love running a business with somebody else. I'm not sure I could do it without somebody. So I get a lot of energy from my business partner as well. She's so different to me. She's an introvert that likes reflecting and sport, and I'm an extrovert who likes action and shopping. Like, we're different on many, many levels. But the energy that I get from our interactions, from like the challenge and the curiosity and the ideas we create an action together, that feels quite special.
Helen, thank you so much. So if our listeners want to get in touch with you, they want to ask you a question or find out more, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they are welcome to email me. They can do that. That's helen@amazingif.com. And if they just want a bit of Squiggly Career support, I would suggest the Squiggly Careers podcast, which they can get wherever they find their podcast. That's always there for people to help.
Thank you for joining us for today's 3 lessons. Do make sure you hit the subscribe button and join us each month for 3 more lessons from breakthrough leaders.
And have you got a question or comment or want to find out more? You can email us at bartsale@breakthroughglobal.com or connect with us on LinkedIn at Breakthrough Global or on Instagram at Global Breakthrough.
We'd love to hear your own leadership stories, and we'd also love for you to share this episode on your own social media and review and rate this podcast on the player of your choice.
And so once again, thanks to our production team, Julia Scholtisova at Breakthrough Global and Robin Leeburn at Fairly Media. And of course, thank you for listening.